all right, party people in the place to be, vandals, and everybody else out there looking in the darkness. This is a brand new episode of How Did We Get Here? And man, this is another fresh one. We got hit new kits Kickstarter, and the creator of it here with us. We got Mr. Brandon Ingram. Going to go ahead and let him introduce himself, talk about his book a little bit. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you guys for having me. Happy to be here.
So basically, we got Brandon's alter ego, Mr. HR himself, which is actually one of the main characters of one of the stories in this book of yours, Tales from Town City.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the character I'm dressed as, for those that don't know anything about Tales from Town City, there's 3 stories within it. It's like Golden Age, superhero, dark comedy, and 3 of them, the 3 stories follow minor characters within a Golden Age superhero, dark comedy universe. And the first story is called Tinfoiled Hypnotism. It follows 2 homeless villains trying to use expired coupons. And I'm dressed as one of those homeless villains. I'm Hypno Ray. The other one is Rusty Hook, but they're close friends. They call each other by their initials, HR and RH. And then the other story follows a mortician that's trying to make sense of dead villains' names. A lot of comedy in that, just him saying like, okay, yeah, your name's the frog, you're dressed as a frog, that makes sense. And it goes over even further as it goes along, where it's like, yours makes no sense at all. You're called the Jackal. You don't resemble a jackal at all. And he's just going off on these villains all while he's cremating their bodies. And then the third story is called Fierce Pets. And PETS is an acronym. It stands for Precise Ecosystemic Tactical Squad, kind of harkening back to those Wildcats days of those acronyms. And Fierce Pets follows a team of super animals that go and slaughter poachers. They slaughter animal poachers very viciously as well, I should say.
Yeah.
When it comes to the 3 stories, that's the one that has like a ton of action as well as a lot of gruesomeness to it. But those are the 3 stories, basic synopses of Tales from Town City #1.
Yeah, that the Pets one is action packed and is pretty brutal at times, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
And this is a tie-in, and it's actually a pretty good lead-in, I would say, to your main series, right?
Yeah, so this is a spin-off. Tales from Town City is a spin-off of The Gallows Man, which is a mini-series that I've been working on for a while. The first 2 issues are out. There'll be 4 issues in total. And The Gallows Man, best way to describe it, is Adam West Batman meets Inglourious Bastards. Like, you combine those 2. It's set in the 1940s. He's beating up and killing Nazis, all while having like the fun jovialness of Adam West Batman. So they're hanging and beating up Nazis, all while being like, like, we got him, chum, good job. Or Newsboy, his Robin equivalent's like, oh, gee Willikers, Gallows Man, like stuff like that. So taking that tone and transitioning it to Tales from Town City was very important, because Tales from Town City has minor characters from The Gallows Man. It follows the minor characters that you don't see a whole lot of in The Gallows Man. They're introduced in there. And Tales from Town City is like, what are they doing in between the pages or before The Gallows Man, basically.
And I think it's a good way to kind of get into the book. Like, I want to read Gallows Man now. Like,
Thank you.
Blast. You actually have a tier on your Kickstarter where you can do the Tales from Town City, and you can get there's a tier where it's the Gallows Man digital bundle, or do you have the physical one as well? Yeah, physical bundle, the catch-up tiers.
Yeah, there's like there's these physical bundles as well as the digital bundles. You don't have to read The Gallows Man to enjoy Tales from Town City. It can be enjoyed by itself. But if you want to read Tales from Town City and also see where it kind of originated from, you can get those bundles. And there's a whole lot within that. Like Gallows Man 1, Gallows Man 2, and Tales from Town City #1 are over 130 pages of comics. And And that digital bundle, as well as some of those catch-up bundles, are a great value for the amount of content you're getting.
Right, and we got the link to the Kickstarter in the description, and I just posted it in the chat. So anybody listening or watching later, you can totally hop on this still. Like, there's how long is there still left, Joe? About
a week, I think.
Week,
6
yeah.
days, right?
Yeah, it'll be going to October 5th, noon Central Time. So yeah, pretty much a week.
Yeah, it says 6 days here, and you're 200% funded, so your campaign did pretty good so far. And,
Oh yeah.
Let's hopefully in that final stretch, you usually get a little charge there in the
Boost.
last week.
Yeah.
There's usually a lot of Kickstarters get that little. I think they say like the first week or two, and then the first and last week are usually where you pick up a lot of backers. So.
Oh yeah. Like
has that been your experience as well so far?
From what I've seen with most Kickstarters, like the most activity, there's activity throughout the Kickstarter. Sometimes there's lull periods, but there's activity throughout. But the most prominent times are the first 72 hours and then the last 72 hours. That's where you see a lot of activity.
Yeah.
But this was one of the first ones where I've had like a decent bit of activity throughout. Like there's only one time where I had like 2 or more days of like plateau, which is rare from the Kickstarters I've ran so far.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is attributed to exactly what we're seeing here right now is you cosplay as your character, and you do these little quick like Instagram videos where you're like acting out and you're trying to like hypnotize people into backing. So I don't know if you want to do like a little bit like that with HR where you're going to hypnotize the listeners to back it. Johnny, you want to put him full screen so he could do his HR and hypnotize people into backing his book?
You will back this Kickstarter at any tier. There are tiers ranging from $1 to $75 for any budget. You will back it. So says Hypno Ray.
Yeah, and you did a bunch of like videos like that all throughout the campaign, and I thought they were pretty funny. Like you get into character. I've seen you post pictures of yourself at cons dressed as Hypno Ray, and a lot of people seem to enjoy that too because it seems like a lot of people like to have pictures taken and stuff. So
it's ultimately like it's the plus side with the cons is it's eye catching. A guy with a tinfoil hat and spiral glasses on, like at least get someone to do a double take. Because when it comes to having a table, you want to have as many eye-catching things as you can. And if one of the actual people behind the table also has something eye-catching about it, it helps even more. So at the very least, I get people that will go by and be like, nice tinfoil hat or or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool stuff. I got a kick out of it. I thought it was pretty good, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what helped keep keeping you from having less like lows in the campaign. So
dedication to the bit goes a long way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and yes, it's working. But yeah, it is one of those things where like, I'm not saying this in a negative way. I'm probably going to milk this this advertisement strategy, I guess, because it's also fun because it's not entirely like just for advertisement. Like yes, like that's a part of it is like getting the word out. But when it comes to doing like promoting a book or promoting whatever project, like it can get like boring sometimes, or you as a creator, you're like like I'm posting another square image of like this thing that I'm doing or whatever it may be, to where like as a creative, because I'm my own marketing team, like because I like creating, I also want the marketing aspect to have like some creation to it as well, so that I'm like engaged in it.
Yeah. And there's only so many things you can share from the book because you don't want to give away all the pages and stuff.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like you say, so you're coming up with a creative way to kind of push the idea without having to show more pictures or this, because if someone's gone and seen the campaign or seen like some other promo stuff, so it just gives you more flexibility on what you can do, and it doesn't get as redundant as you post to promote stuff either. Like it's a lot of fun. Like I got a kick out of it when I watched you. So and speaking of promoting it, you put together a pretty
hilarious,
not elaborate, but a very well produced promo video for your campaign. Which, if you go on the Kickstarter campaign, you have it there, but we're going to play it for viewers. If they haven't seen your campaign, we'll play it here, and it'll probably entice some people to go back it. And Johnny has that queued up and ready to go.
Yeah, gang. Ice cream's so good.
It hit just right at the right time. From the
pages of the Gallows Man comes a brand new series of tales. Not tales as in what furries wish they had behind them, but rather the story type of tales, like what you would find in a comic book. Speaking of which, this is an ad for Tales from Town City #1. This anthology series follows lesser-known characters that were introduced in the Gallows Man miniseries. Characters like Hypno Ray and the Rusty Hook. You'll follow these two homeless villains and their ventures into trying to use expired coupons they found. Or characters like Hangmutt as this super-heroic dog and his team of super animals slaughter poachers on the daily. And there's even more characters that you'll just have to wait and see for yourself. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, if Tales from the Town City spins off from the Gallows Man series, do I need to read the Gallows Man to get Tales from the Town City? The answer is no, you silly listener. You don't need to read the Gallows Man to enjoy the stories found within Tales from the Town City. Each issue and story found within Tales from Town City is self-contained. So what are you waiting for? Support Tales from Town City #1 by backing it on Kickstarter today. Why has it come to this? I mean, how the hell did Gallows Man do well enough to warrant a spin-off? Why did I even take this gig? I mean, they had me read a dumb little ad and then force me to say things like, "My name is Jeff," and, ice cream, so good, gang, gang. Like, when is it enough if I said, "Shout out to Little Big Toe, keep it 100G"? Would that be enough to satiate their hunger? Or would I have to humiliate myself and say something as repulsive as, "I do declare there is feces running down my pants as we speak"? When will it be enough? I may never know.
Yeah, that's some pretty good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things where like we touched on it a little bit ago with like marketing. Like this is also part of that. Like I no matter what it is, because ultimately when it comes to a Kickstarter trailer, like 100, 200 people will see it. That's usually how a Kickstarter trailer will go. You can see the analytics of that if you run a Kickstarter of how your trailers are viewed. But I ultimately like to do as much as I can with the trailer. Ultimately for me, I do it because I think people will enjoy it. Like I try to put a quality, funny trailer out, but I also do it for me to where it's like, it's an extension of me creating, essentially, like writing the script for the trailer, working with the guy on Fiverr. This is the third time I've worked with him because he did the narration of the Gallows Man #1 Kickstarter. He did the narration of Gallows Man #2 Kickstarter. And with each one of those, I get him to do the typical ad and then like the crazy dumb stuff at the end. Yeah, which is a lot of fun. And I make sure ahead of time, like, "Hey, you okay with saying like really dumb stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, for sure." And but yeah, Mr. Corley on Fiverr, he's really great at the narration. And then this time I got a a YouTube buddy of mine, he offered to edit the trailer, and I think it came together very well. Nerdtastic News, Manny from that. But yeah,
Okay.
it's one of those things where like it's small, ultimately 100, 200 people see it, but for my benefit in just creating, essentially, I like doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like in your description on Kickstarter, you kind of give a brief history of your like love for comics and how you got into it and stuff like that. So yeah, so since you were a kid, you said, right? If you
Oh,
go
yeah.
read the Kickstarter, yard sales, right? Just picking up
Yeah.
comics at yards, a box of comics at a yard sale, and that just from there you just never look back.
Yeah, it started from there, and then periodically throughout like middle school would read a comic here and there, and then a buddy of mine handed me volume 1 of New 52 Batman when that was running and stuff, and read that. And that was the Court of Owls storyline. I was reading, I was like, oh my gosh, this is really good. And then I was like, because if someone has read volume 1 of New 52 Batman, it's essentially a cliffhanger where it's like, oh crap, like I need to read the rest. I want to see Batman like beat up all these Court of Owls guys. And so as soon as I got done with that, went to a comic shop, picked up volume 2, Night of Owls. And then from there, that's where I kind of got into picking up floppies like weekly or monthly, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the good old pull list.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what's your background? Like, did you study in art? Did you study writing? Like, what propelled you to make your own comic?
Yeah, so it's odd. Like I look at all the pieces. Like I don't have a writing degree. Did a lot of writing though. I'll mention that. Don't have a writing degree. I love and admire art. Like my mom's an artist. Like she's an art teacher. She was an art teacher. Now she like lives off of her art and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with the fundamentals of art. Really love art. Really admire it. Can go to museums all day. I collect original comic art, like all kinds of stuff. But I suck at art. Like I'm stick figures basically. That's what I can do. But I still admire it, and I also really like writing. Like around the end of high school is when I realized that I like to write.
Okay.
But then I looked back as time went on and realized that there were pieces there where it's like, oh, like I wrote this in middle school, I wrote this in elementary school and really enjoyed it. But yeah, I really got into writing at the end of high school. I was writing short horror film scripts starting off, and then from there it spun off to feature-length horror film scripts, and then like short and feature-length other genre scripts. So it started there, and then as I was entering all these contests and stuff, as well as like the degree I was in, wasn't a writing degree, but I wrote so many papers that it just helped me in terms of pacing, in terms of writing, all while actually writing scripts and stuff. And with those scripts I was writing, I would enter them into competitions. And some of them did fairly well. Like some of my short ones, like got small awards. And then I also got great constructive criticism, like great constructive feedback on a bunch of them. And as I was making those, I was also like really big into reading comics at the time, because that was around the time of DC Rebirth, whenever that was hitting. So I was reading comics a ton. And as I was reading, I was just kind of want to make my own comic. Like I want to learn how to make a comic and then make a comic. So for like about a year and a half to 2 years, I was just looking at all kinds of YouTube videos, interviews with writers and editors, and just all kinds of stuff, just absorbing as much as I could. And eventually, early 2019, I had this bit of knowledge, still needed to learn more, but had this bit of knowledge and was like, okay, so I know how to make a comic, essentially, at least to a degree. And then I finally got a push when meeting Jim Kruger. He's written stuff like Justice with Alex Ross with DC, and he's written Earth X with Marvel. I met him February of 2019, and it wasn't like a comic convention or anything. I just met him, had like a good 15-minute talk with him. And it was, I asked him like all kinds of stuff. I asked him the fan type questions, like, what's it like working with Alex Ross? Like stuff like that. But also like how was it you getting into making comics, writing comics, and also just expanding from there. But it was a talk that I really needed to have, because I had this stuff leading up to of like, okay, I can make a comic. But that talk was the thing that like actually pushed me into like pressing the button, like, okay, I'm doing this, because this sounds like such the stereotypical motivational speaker thing, but it's true. When you really want to do something, you can hold off and hold off and hold off. Ultimately, you just do it. Like the Nike saying, the Shia LaBeouf meme, the just do it. Like, don't let your dreams be dreams, that sort of thing. Like, as corny and cliche as it is, it's true. You just have to take that step, like push yourself. And I managed to do that after that interaction with Jim Kruger, to where the very next month after that, I was looking for artists on DeviantArt. And eventually, like within a month, was working on Dismay Avenue 1 and 2, which is my horror anthology series. But that's essentially how it all started, how the ball started rolling.
So, and that's how I'm assuming that's how you came with the name for your comics. You named it after that series.
Yeah. I basically pulled a DC Comics, where I made a comic series, Dismay Avenue. And like that took like a few hours in a day to come up with that name. And then after that, it took like 5 minutes to be like, okay, I need a publishing name. Okay, the book's called Dismay Avenue. My publishing name will be Dismay Comics. Okay, there we go. But yeah, that's pretty much how that originated.
And you took a shot, you made those, and then you did your Gallow Man, which inspired this book right now that you have the Kickstarter running for.
Yeah, which is it's interesting and odd, because like back when I wrote the Gallows Man, even like a year and a half ago, had no idea or no intention of like expanding the Gallows Man world. Like I was thinking the 4-issue miniseries, which each issue is pretty thick, it's like double size, but 4-issue miniseries, and then maybe one day in the future doing a sequel series, like sequel miniseries, because I've got a good idea for that. But I was like, that's probably going to be it. But ultimately, Tales from Town City originated from a mistake I made, a publishing / printing mistake I made. I was making Gallows Man #2. This was around the beginning of 2022. We were starting to wrap up and making that. And as we were finishing, along the way, I realized we added like a couple pages for pacing wise to help pacing go well. So we added a couple pages that I worked into the script along the way. And once we got to the end, I realized with Gallows Man, I like to have behind the scenes type stuff, like me talking about like, oh, like here's the creation of this, or just what was going on during that time. I only had like one page to do any of that stuff. And as you know, just from right now, I like to talk a lot. So I needed more than one page. Okay. So it was one of those things where it's like, well, I guess I'm just going to, I should also mention the printer, the comic printing company I use, print in page increments of 4. So like 4, 8, 12, 16. Okay. So it's one of those things where it's like, I guess I'll just have to add another 4-page increment.
4 pages. Okay.
So I was able to get all my word vomit out onto the behind the scenes stuff. And then once I was done with that and having like a podcast ad that I do, I was like, oh crap, I got like 2 pages to fill. Like there's 2 blank pages I got to do. So I was like, oh, I'll do like a 2-page backup story, like following one of the minor characters. And I wrote a 2-page story on Newsboy, basically Gallows Man's Robin. And it was a funny story. It's basically him with his mom. He's whenever he's not doing his Newsboy stuff, it's just like him having a dream, and it's like hilarious and over the top and stuff. But once I got done with that, I realized like, oh crap, like I want to do like more of these with like some of the other minor characters in the Gallows Man universe that don't get the spotlight that the Gallows Man does, because I could see stories for this character, these characters, that sort of stuff, to where from there it was like, okay, I'll do a one shot. I'll do a 40-50 page one shot with like all these characters I want to write about. And then I actually started writing all the stories and realized like, oh crap, this is not going to be a one shot. Like it's too much to be a one shot, to where it's now like I have 3 issues of Tales from Town City written, like each issue following different minor characters within this world. So I say all this to say Tales from Town City, the series, ultimately originated from a mistake I made. So
from adding those 2 extra pages.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's interesting to see how like creativity, like not just in this aspect, there's other movies or comics where essentially a mistake or an oversight happens, and it's like, well, and this character was created or this spin-off was created. So it's interesting to see how it came about with Tales from Town City for me.
Cool. You were saying, Johnny, you were going to say something before I cut you off. Sorry.
Oh no, I just was saying. He said it came about like, as an accident. I said like some of the best things are, and he touched on the same thing I did. I was going to talk about how Mobius and Alejandro Jodorowsky met on a failed Dune movie, and they went on to make some of the greatest sci-fi comics ever. You know what I mean?
So Gallows Man and Tales from Town City definitely has more of a comedic vibe to it, right?
Oh yeah.
And I haven't read the Dismay Avenue. Is that have comedic? Is it like horror comedy, or is it like more like straight horror?
It's pretty much straight up horror, like different elements of horror. Like some are psychological horror, some are kind of cosmic horror, just different kinds. But yeah, it's Gallows Man Tales from Town City is Brandon doing his comedy writing, whereas like Dismay Avenue is like, oh, like I thought I knew this guy. It's kind of scary. I'm kind of scared of him.
You kind of broke Hypno Ray's rules on speaking in the third person, though.
I did. Oh no.
Are you thinking of maybe going back to doing some horror writing, or are you gonna continue with this and then maybe revisit it after you've completed like your 3 issues of the Towns Tales from Town City, or how do you what's your game plan going forward?
Like right now, like in like stuff we're making right now is like Gallows Man #3, Tales from Town City #2, and Dismay Avenue #3 is being made right now as well. So I hope to have, or I will have, not really hope, I will have Dismay Avenue #3 out within a year. Where the series goes from there, I would love to have an issue 4 or beyond that, because it's a horror anthology. Each issue is its own story or own set of stories. But I have a ton of horror stuff written to where like even if Dismay Avenue stops at like issue 3 or issue 4, like I there's a ton of stuff I want to pitch to other publishers that have anthologies, or just simply starting a book with another publisher that I would love to put those stories in. Ultimately, because with me and Kickstarter, like I can put maybe 3 books out a year, like just with life as well as timing and stuff with me. But if I'm working through another publisher, that will help mitigate some of the roles. Not entirely, like I'm completely down with writing. I'm completely down with working with artists, down with editing. I'm down with even like picking out and finding all these people. I love that aspect of it. It's more just like the marketing aspect. Like I do love marketing, but like there's a lot of buildup that has to happen. And when you got a 9 to 5, there's only so much time you can do that stuff.
Yeah.
Especially like when you got to ship and send out. That's really, that's kind of the worst part, right?
I prefer that. I mean, yes, that does take a lot of time. Don't get me wrong. That takes a lot of time. When it comes to all the self-publishing stuff, that is not at the bottom of my list. The bottom of my list is like marketing, specifically like how do I market this book? And I'm not talking about like doing podcasts or YouTube shows. This is like the stuff that I like when it comes to marketing. I don't even consider this like part of the marketing stuff, because it's like this is essentially my like I don't drink like alcohol or anything, but this is like me sitting down with a nice wine to cap off the night, kind of. So it's more of like the trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, because that's what's frustrating with Kickstarter sometimes, is like you have this one thing that works for this campaign, like that happened before, or it doesn't have to be the campaign that happened before. You have this one thing that worked like a week ago for you, and then the next day it's like, oh, that doesn't work, to where you're just like, okay, what works, what doesn't. That can be frustrating. So I say like that is definitely higher on the list of frustrating stuff compared to packaging comics and stuff, because I much prefer doing that than figuring out like what the heck do I do marketing wise.
Yeah, I don't even think about that aspect of a good call. Like, yeah, that sounds terrible.
It's just like I mentioned, it's frustrating, just like trying to figure out what works, because every other day it's something new or something different. And not entirely that you have to like keep up with trends, but it's also like, what the heck do social media algorithms, what are they looking for nowadays? That's what's frustrating.
You never know. It change, like you said, it can change from one week to the next. So there's a few small things that I noticed when we were checking out the book. Is you said you have a love for comics from since you were a kid, and there was one really obvious wink in the Pets storyline where they do the a wink towards like the Colossus throwing Wolverine. What do you call that?
Fastball special.
The fastball special. Yeah, I love that panel. That was great. The fastball special. A little wink in there. So yeah, you definitely show some respect to like some of the older comics and like just iconic things from past comics and stuff, which was really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's one of those things where like, yes, it is like the book as well as like Gallows Man is like parody and kind of satire of Golden Age or Silver Age comics, but it's never like harsh jabs or anything. It's slight poking fun at, but also like embracing, because I do like those eras of comics. I like all eras of comics, but that era of comics is something that's just so different, especially like Silver Age. Like Silver Age is like so wacky, and like just the adventures and stuff that happen are just so crazy and over the top, to where like I like comics today. I think comics are me personally, when it comes to storytelling and stuff, at one of the best parts today. There are so many great stories out there today. Um, but something that I think has like slowly not gone to the wayside, because you can find it through indie comics, specifically Kickstarters, like super indie people, but like just fun and wackiness with comics, I feel like isn't as prevalent anymore. Like I love me a deep story. I love me a serious philosophical story that gets me to thinking, even moves me to tears. Like there are a ton of those out there today, and they're so great. Like Tom King, one of my favorite writers when it comes to writing like a 12-issue series or less. Like I think he masters that. But sometimes you need like a break in between that stuff. You need just a fun time, not entirely like turn your brain off in terms of Fast and the Furious movies, but just a fun time to just like that was good. Okay, now I'll get back to my my serious make me cry stuff. So that's what I try to do with Gallows Man and Tales from Town City, is like harken back to those times where it's just fun time to read.
Yeah, I feel you on that for sure. I love just a wacky, weird comic that's just a ton of fun to read. Where
I see what you mean though. Like it is, I see the satire there, but like at the same time, the book is unironically wholesome. You know what I mean? Especially the Death Ray and Rusty Hook story. Like that is so touching. You know what I mean? It's cute. I mean, I don't mean it in a bad way, but like it's camp. And like some actual just fun, good camp in the story to kind of
exactly, like you can have fun with a comic. You can lean into cliches or campiness, and it still be enjoyable. I think people shy away from it too much because they think there's a negative connotation or a negative stigma to camp or to some of the cliches, but it's like, no, you can play into those and it still be somewhat original.
Yeah, they just people always go to when people overdo it, and and it's too tongue in cheek and too wink and naughty. Whereas like where you do it, it's generally like you were trying to replicate the way they told stories in the more wholesome style of 1970s DC pre-crisis.
That's what I was ultimately trying to go for, is like that style. Like yes, it does feel somewhat modern, but also you can see that element of the Silver Age comics, and then like the Golden Age comics sprinkled in that like Gallows Man universe is like a hyperization of like here's ultimately Gallows Man and Tales from Town City fun reads. You don't have to like put your thinking cap on or your tinfoil cap on and be like, okay, what are some deep things in here? There's not a ton of crazy deep stuff, but there is stuff in there if you're trying to dig for that. Because like Gallows Man is ultimately like Golden Age time, like our actual history, Golden Age comics. You had heroes who were killing muggers, like shooting them, killing them, whatever it may be. And you had little kids reading it, like a little 5-year-old, like, yeah, like this guy rocks. I want to be like him. This dude's awesome. And so the Gallows Man is essentially like a hyperization of that. Like Town City, the universe itself is like a hyperization of that, to where you have like newscasters in the Gallows Man, like radio casters that are like, oh boy, the Gallows Man and Newsboy, they did it again, old chums. Like they hung the frog out to dry today, like that sort of stuff. To where it is this hyperization of like our actual history with Golden Age comics, as well as like slightly, at least with Gallows Man, touching on like our desensitization to violence as a society, which I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying like that's a thing. Like I'm not like preaching in the comic. It's just like I'm not leaning on a side whether it's good or bad. I'm just saying like this is a thing that has definitely happened, and it became even more prevalent, or I noticed it more when I started doing conventions where like a mom would come up and she would ask like, okay, like, would this be good for my kid? I'd be like, well, it depends. And I said like, this was with the gals, man. I was like, there's no nudity, there's no language, there's no drug use, no sexual themes, no alcohol use, none of this. But there is like some over the top violence and it can get gruesome. Like that's really it. And mom will be like, well, as long as there's no like language or nudity, yeah, I'm good with that. So it was just interesting to see like how at least we as Americans, how we rank our stuff, where it's like, I'm not going to show little Billy a nipple, but I can show someone's head getting ripped off. That's all good with me. It's just, and I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just saying like, it's just interesting that is the American society.
Good call.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have a question then. Since the frog is canon and I guess appears in Gallows Man, do we find out why the jackal is called the jackal?
No, you actually don't. Not in here. That could be a future Tales from Town City type thing, but no, I ultimately liked it to where, because the jackal, spoiler for people, this is the first like 7 pages of the Gallows Man. The jackal does die, as well as the walrus guy. They both die in like the first 7 pages of Gallows Man. But with the jackal, I ultimately just wanted like pretty much a gangster character, but like he has a unique colored suit, and he's just called the Jackal. And to where whenever I was writing that Mortician story for Tales from Town City, I was pulling 3 villains that had already died in Gallows Man. I was like, yeah, like I want the Mortician to kind of touch on these, because when it comes to those 3 stories, that's like the most meta story, because it's like, oh, he's talking about super villains or superhero characters, and how like even today we have some where it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like a lot of these Spider-Man villains names, it makes sense because he's named the Scorpion, he looks like a scorpion, that sort of stuff. But then you can get into other villains or superheroes where it's like,
yeah, when you look at the Shocker,
I don't see the connection.
You don't see the Shocker,
yeah.
you see like a quilted man, you know.
Yeah. When I see the Shocker, for some reason, like it's dumb, but I think of like Sandstrew from Pokemon, because he has like that color pattern. I don't know. I've always thought that.
And but, today with today's sensibility, like the villain called the Shocker, people might think it's something else. Some guy going around sticking his finger in people's butts, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was ultimately just me, just a 4-page comic, just like kind of poking at that a little bit. And it's not like any harshness to comics, but it was just like, yeah, that is something I've noticed.
The Mortician, the way he was trying to rationalize it to himself really cracked me up about like, well, if you scream like a jackal, that would be embarrassing though. So like, I hope that's not the reason you called yourself that.
Yeah.
Got me pretty interested.
So you have, let's see here, credits. You have Juan Romero, who works on the Hypno Ray story and the Fierce Pet story. And then the Mortician story is drawn by Helen Bolton. And you have Nikki, who does the lettering?
Nikki Powers.
Nikki Powers does the lettering? Yeah.
Yeah, the team, I've worked with pretty much everyone in that credits page. I've worked with them on previous stuff. The one person that's new with me working with is Juan Romero, which he does most of the comic art, the 2 big stories in this. But how I got to working with Juan is I was ultimately a fan of his. Like I really like, I'm a fan of a book called Slowpokes by Steve Marina. Yeah. So it was one of those things where I read Slowpokes, and maybe 6 months or a year later, I started like trying to figure out what stories I wanted to write for Tales from Town City. And the Fierce Pets thing eventually came up. And I was writing it, and I was like, oh, like there's like over the top, dumb, fun, like gruesomeness to these poachers getting slaughtered. by these animals. And I was like, oh, like I went back to my long box and like pulled out Slowpokes. I was like, oh yeah, like Juan can do animals killing human violence very well, like comedically, like it's done very well. And that's what I wanted to go for. So I was like, Slowpokes is basically like his portfolio. Like I don't have to ask for anything else. I just reached out to him. I was like, hey, like big fan of your work on Slowpokes. Like I've got this project that I'm working on that involves super animals killing poachers. And so essentially I hired him for that. And as I was hiring him for that, I looked back at Slowpokes as well as I looked at like his actual portfolio and like went through there and realized like, yes, he can do like the action and the gruesome, violent comedy, but also saw he's good, like really good at just dialogue based comedy in terms of like emotions with faces and reactions with characters and stuff. He's able to draw that very well. To where I hired him to do Tinfoiled Hypnotism, which is ultimately like almost a polar opposite in terms of comedy wise, because it's two homeless villains trying to use expired coupons at a convenience store. Like it's mostly dialogue based humor. But he was able to do that art very well. So yeah, Juan was amazing to work with. And Helen, who did the Mortician story, she's the main artist of the Gallows Man. So it's one of those things where it's like I want to get her to do like backups within Tales from Town City, essentially, like get 4 to 5 page stories, like little stories in Tales from Town City, as kind of like a nod, like it's like, oh, like this artist, that's the main artist of the Gallows Man type thing. So it's really good. And Nikki Powers, she's my go-to letterer when it comes to like needing a letterer. Like she's the one I go to first, and yeah, she does an amazing job.
And you have the artist who did the variant cover,
yes,
Thomas Tikas.
Yeah, Thomas Tikas. He's the main cover artist of the Gallows Man. Like he did the cover art for issue 1, 2, 3, 4. The 3 and 4 art is completely done for the cover, and that was ultimately another nod type thing where it's like, oh, like get Thomas to do like a variant cover for issue 1 of Tales from Town City. It's like, oh, like it's the same cover artist, and yeah, he knocked it out of the park with Hypno Ray and Rusty Hood. Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah, he did a great job. Yeah, it's a nice cover.
Thank you.
So, Johnny, did you have any other questions or anything you wanted to touch on from the Tales of Town City?
Yeah, just so I know, like, following this up, you said you're going to be doing Gallows Man 3 next is going to be your next project to come out.
The next one that'll come out will most likely be Gallows Man 3. Either Gallows Man 3 or Dismay Avenue number 3 will be the next one that comes out. But one of those will come out towards the beginning of 2024. And then the other one that doesn't come out then will come out around the middle of 2024. And then if Tales from Town City number 2 is done by the end of next year, I hope to have that out around the fall time of next year.
And also, are you planning on building this universe bigger? Like, is this going to be the first arc for Gallows Man, or are you going to try to tie it up?
It's one of those things where with the Gallows Man miniseries, like, I plan to, like, it's a complete story. Issue 4 will be the end of that. But there are other somewhat spin-off stuff I want to do, like Tales from Town City, but there's also some stuff I've thought about doing with Newsboy. But that doesn't mean like it'll be the end of the Gallows Man. The Gallows Man will appear in some of these other stuff, but
the universe will continue. He's taking a back seat, kind of.
The universe will continue. He's taking a back seat. He'll have like cameo or small roles within stuff, because the Gallows Man is like, he's the center focus of that miniseries. Plus, I have a good idea, and I want to wait. I don't want to put it out in 2-3 years. I've got a good sequel mini series idea that I want to. I'm still writing it, but I have it all outlined. I want to wait 5 to 10 years before putting that out because there's other stuff I also want to put out. Like I do want to keep the essentially the Gallows Man universe or the Tales from Town City universe going, but there's also other stuff that I want to put out there. And then eventually, 5-10 years down the road, it's like, oh, like another Gallows Man miniseries, the sequel miniseries.
I like it. Right on. Good game plan.
Thank you.
And you were saying before that your Gallows Man series, those are all like double issues, you were saying, right? It's a little bit thicker.
Like just in terms of story alone, like not including like me rambling in the back of the books of the behind the scenes stuff or whatever. Just in terms of story, issue 1 is 49 pages of story. Issue 2 is 49 pages of story. Issue 3 is probably going to be the thickest of them. Like we're working on issue 3 right now. It'll probably be anywhere from 50 to 60 pages.
Okay.
Because we've added some pages. Then yeah, issue 4 will pretty much be the same, about 49, 50 pages. So yeah, they're like over double sized issues basically.
Nice. So people get a pretty good chunk of story when they get the Gallows Man issues.
Oh
That's
yeah,
cool.
for sure.
Nice stuff. Good stuff. And that you were saying early, you'd like to do that in the early next year.
With issue 3 of Gallows Man. Yeah, I hope to have issue 3 out on Kickstarter maybe around February of 2024. Okay. If that's not the Kickstarter for February 2024, it'll be Dismay Avenue number 3.
Dismay Avenue.
But yeah, whichever one it isn't, the middle of the year, I hope to have the other one, like if it's Gallows Man 3 or Dismay Avenue 3.
So this must be pretty encouraging for you because, I mean, you got a week left. You're well funded. You're over 200% funded. So that must be pretty encouraging for you that what starting Gallows Man, this spin-off, like there's actually interest there and that people are into it and are backing it. So you must be pretty happy that this idea of just doing stories that spun from these minor characters in your book has garnered enough interest that you'll be running like a 3-issue series on this. So
it's awesome to see like the support that has come and will come for this Kickstarter. But yeah, it's just awesome to see because I set the Kickstarter at $1,000, like the goal, and we're already over double that. Because ultimately I pay out of pocket for the art, like for the artist. And I like to have the book completely done before I launch a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So once the Kickstarter's done, the book's completely done. And then once we hit that funding goal, it's like, okay, book's done, hit the funding goal. Basically, if you back the Kickstarter, you're guaranteed to get the book. And I've worked on past Kickstarters and have fulfilled those to where it's like a guarantee essentially. Like I because I am a small fry, like yes, I've made like a few books. I'm still a small fry though. Like I want people to have confidence in like, okay, Dismay Comics will have these books for me. Like these books will come out.
Yeah.
They're completely done. Like literally as soon as the Kickstarter's over, I send it off to the printer. And basically by the time the Kickstarter's done, people get their books within 2 to 3 months essentially. And it's just one of those things where like, if you're willing to support me, I want to be able to give you the most confidence in hey, this is happening. Like, it's not like I'm going to just drop it. Like, it's not like the book's a quarter of the way done, or I just showed you a little doodle and it's like, hey, see this? This will be a 45-page comic or whatever. It's like,
Johnny and I can confirm that the book is done because you sent us review copies. So the book is complete. So people don't have to worry about that. Like you said, once the funding's done, you just have to send it to the printers and then fulfill. So I think that's the best policy. I think we get a lot of creators on, and I think that's the best way, the best approach, if you can. I mean, have the book ready to go, and you avoid any kind of disasters that could possibly happen.
Oh no, I've seen people that had books completely done still have disasters because they were perfectionists and the printers couldn't get the right color orange and stuff, and they had to get several copies of their books printed, several runs of it. You know what I mean?
And I've had that happen to me once before, like with a printer where my book's completely done, but it wasn't entirely the perfectionist thing, but it was like I noticed errors with their printing, and I want like the best quality for people. I don't want like a small little printing smudge on the cover or the back of the cover or just in a random page to where it kind of distracts you or take you out of the book. Like if there's those errors that like aren't my fault, like I'll take a picture and I'll send to the printer and be like, hey, like I is it possible to get replacements for this? And the printer I work with, like, this isn't like, I'm not sponsored by them. It's not an ad or anything, but just from what I've seen, Comics Wellspring, I've worked with them before, and I have like once before had issues with my comic issues. And I took pictures, sent it to them, and they were like, they sent me replacement copies with like free of charge. So it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, like that issue happened, but I'm happy they were willing to correct it. And with something like that, like it was like, I'm trying to think, like eventually I sent the books like 3 months after the Kickstarter, whereas like before it would have been 2 months, but because of that printing issue, it was 3. So it wasn't too bad. It wasn't like, hey, I told you you'd get your books in 2 to 3 months, and here they are a year later.
We've had a few people on that do Kickstarters that have done business with Comics Wellspring as well.
Yeah.
And, they never had anything negative or bad to say about them either. So, I think they have a pretty good reputation.
And I didn't mean anything by the perfectionist thing.
Oh,
like,
no,
I understand why I wouldn't want a misprinted comic either, you know what I mean? Even though like I have gotten a few times creators have been cool and actually sent out like the misprinted ones along with the fixed ones. I always appreciate that too.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like when it comes to anything I create, and I would say this is a lot of creators, not saying it's all creators, but a lot of creators, like, these are essentially our mind babies, basically, our brain babies, to where like we want it to be the best it can be when we give it to someone. Like, yes, you bought it, like that's cool, like you pre-ordered the comic or whatever, but we also want you to like enjoy it to the fullest it can be, whether it's like the comic looks right in terms of printing, like all these tiny details that like as a reader people don't really think about, but as a creative, we're like all creators are like trying to get it the best it can look to a degree, because sometimes we can be extreme perfectionists, and if like I've worked on that like the past 3 years and have definitely seen changes the past 2 years. But like, yeah, if you're an extreme perfectionist, you might not even get something put out because you're constantly making changes or critiquing your own stuff.
Yeah, I was talking about like one book. I'm not going to put them on blast, but like the book's selling point was like the only color really that was in it was orange, and throughout certain parts. So like it was an important thing to the book, and like, yeah, I think the guy had to send it back like 5 times because they kept getting the wrong. It wasn't bright enough or whatever that he wanted. So yeah,
and something like that, like I'm not putting any like specific printer on blast, but like something like that is ultimately kind of the printer's fault. Yeah, because it's, if he had a specific thing in mind, as well as you can, like, yes, when you print something it's going to look slightly different than that digital file. It'll look a little different than the digital file. But if colors are off than what was intended, then I do get that. That does sound frustrating. I do feel bad for that creator.
Now, you're dressed up as your character HR, which, as we touched on before, when you go to cons and stuff, you like to dress up because it helps get attention and people notice you, so it helps you sell your product. So in that light, do you have any cons coming up or any shows you're going to that people will be able to go meet you and maybe pick up the Gallows Man and Dismay Avenue? Do you have anything coming up that you'd want to plug here?
Yeah, I've got one more con for the year. It's Pensacon Halloween Fest. It's in Pensacola, Florida. So if anyone's in the Northwest Florida region, it's from October 7th to 8th. You can just type in Pensacon Halloween Fest in Google or on Facebook, and it'll pop up with more information. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be the last one, and I feel like it'll do fairly well because it's Halloween based, and I feel like Dismay Avenue will do pretty well with that one. But yeah, and I hope to do more next year. This year was ultimately my first year of doing cons, and it was kind of just seeing what cons work, what cons don't, that sort of thing. And I noticed like the smaller conventions do very well for indie comic creators specifically. Just because you're not competing with like the celebrity or that are there. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I understand as a customer or like someone going into a con, like for some of these big conventions like a Fan Expo or whatever, you're paying $50 for the day. Then you're paying like $100 to get a photo and autograph with the big celebrity. Then you also are paying for lunch. That's probably $20 or more. So like right there, you're out almost $200. So I completely get like, I don't really want to go through Artist Alley right now. But the smaller conventions, you don't really have to compete for the big celebrities like Sam Raimi or whatever. Like nothing against Sam Raimi. I wanted to get his autograph at Fan Expo. Like but then I heard the price. I was like, ooh, like I'm already paying a lot for the hotel. But so yeah, like I completely get it. But yeah, the smaller cons are good, but I do want to try some of the bigger cons that lean towards comics because yes, we call them comic conventions. But most conventions nowadays, comics is like a small part. Which, don't get me wrong, I do love like the that these conventions are like the melting pot when it comes to pop culture and nerdom. Like we can all come together, and that's super awesome and cool. But it is just something you notice is like comics are very minute thing when it comes to these. So I do want to try out some. I've heard Heroes Con in South Carolina is pretty good. Thinking about that. And then some others. That's the downside about being in the South is specifically where I am in the South. Like I'm not in like South Florida or anything. There's not a lot of conventions around me. So just trying to see the ones that are somewhat in the Southeast that I've heard good things. Do what?
You around Tampa?
No, I'm near Pensacola, Florida. Like where I am is like 9 to 10 hours from Tampa. Okay. That's what's so weird about Florida is like
I know
you're in the same state, but it's like you would be 12 hours apart, basically.
Yeah. So cool. Just to remind people, the link for the Kickstarter is in the description. So go hit that. Go back. Tales from Town City. It's a spin-off series from the Gallows Man series. Touches on some of the minor side characters from the story and elaborates on them. So go check that out. Go back it. Congratulations on the Kickstarter. It's funded. So anything you guys going back now is just going to help. Help make this book even better, and help help you fund your future projects. Like you said, early next year, you plan on having either Gallows Man 3 or Dismay number 3 coming out. So, I mean, every little bit helps. So, if you guys, go hit that link in the description and give Brandon a hand there with his book, because it's a good book, man. It's funny. He definitely has some good comedic timing in his writing, and it's some fun stuff. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I also want to mention, to tag on with that, the only way to get these books is through the Kickstarter, unless you live in the Pensacola area and you see me at a convention 2 or 3 times a year. The only way to get them is through Kickstarter. Like, I don't have an online shop or anything like that. I might be shooting myself in the foot a little bit there, but I personally like doing Kickstarters where it's like an event. Like, it's like, oh, Dismay Comics has a new book out, and you have you got a month basically to back it and pre-order it. I like doing Kickstarters that way, where it is funding the book, but it's also like, oh, like, yes, this is like the place I can get it, essentially.
It's like a merch drop, basically.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And like we said, there's the the catch-up tiers as well. So if you want to pick up Gallows Man 1 and 2, there are some tiers in there where you can get all the comics, all your work as well. So, I mean, you have tons of tiers for whatever you want to pick up. So, yeah, go check it out. There's different tiers for all different budgets, for people who want to drop a lot or just spend a little. I mean, you have tiers for everyone in there. So, not to be discouraged. I mean, there's something in there for everyone.
It's pretty reasonable, even at the highest. It only gets up to $75. I think it's the highest tier. So, I mean, like that's very reasonable for a Kickstarter.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's ultimately, I want like good value with each tier. It helps support the book, but also you as a backer, someone who's pre-ordering the book, essentially, like it's good value in whatever tier it is, to where like the only other thing I could see being like higher than a $75 tier is if I did like original cover art tier. Like, obviously that'd be more than $75. That's because I try to think of like good value when it comes to those tiers. And like, that's the only higher thing I could think of. And I sound selfish. I'm not going to do that because I like having the original cover art. So, because I collect original comic art. So,
well, you say that now till you have wait till you get to where you're making 20, 40 comics in your library. Then you'll be like, oh, I guess I could part with a few of these covers, you know?
I can part with a couple of them, but most of them I'm going to have to keep.
Yeah. So, man, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Love the book. Good luck with your final week on Kickstarter. Hopefully you'll get that little boost at the final week. What did you say? The last 72 hours, usually you get a nice little uptick. So
yeah, we've got one more stretch goal, a $2,500 stretch goal, where once we hit that, all physical backers will get a poster of the Fierce Pets. Like we have a poster, and people can check that out in the Kickstarter. I'm really excited about that. And also, another little bonus is something I like is if you back the Kickstarter, you get these coupons. It comes with the book. It comes with any physical tier, whether you get a T-shirt or a comic, whatever it is. You get a 50% off tinfoil coupon and 50% off canned yams coupon. And there's even fine print at the very bottom where it says, hold on, let me get it just right. Where it says offer only available at the supermarket located in Town City, expires August 14th, 1941. So for all physical backers, you'll get this. This isn't on the Kickstarter page. It's something I thought of a month and a half ago. I was it doesn't set me back hardly any, because I made these, and it doesn't cost much to print them. I use my Works printer, so I was I'll just put these in the physical tiers, because I kind of like it, because it's hey, it's an actual item within the comic
Yeah,
itself,
and
like a
it's-
central plot point to a comic. So just
Yeah.
little fun stuff. People should back the Kickstarter. People are backing it for the coupons.
Yeah.
The comics are just a bonus. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. So, your socials. You want to plug your socials on where people can go find you, and because you've done a great job, like I said before, on your Instagram for promoting this book. I thought it was fun, and I mean, it's a fun follow because you do fun stuff for people to follow when you're doing stuff and to keep up to date. So what's your socials?
Thank you. So, Dismay Comics, that's DISMAY Comics on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And now that I have this costume, you'll probably see more stuff with me dressed as Hypno Ray, just because I enjoy doing the dumb or fun ads with Hypno Ray, or like I like to review indie comics on TikTok. Like you can see me review those, or whenever I get an original comic art piece, I review that and talk about it. And with some of those, I might even start just dressing as Hypno Ray while doing it. So you can keep up to date on projects I'm working on, as well as just whatever is coming out of Dismay Comics.
Fantastic. Johnny.
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to be doing an early episode. We're going to have Monty Nero on from the UK. He's going to come on. We're going to talk. He's got a cyberpunk book coming out. He kind of talked to me a little bit about, and I think we're going to be talking about his new Death Sentence book that I think Titan's going to be putting out. So that's rad. I really enjoy his Death Sentence book. So it's going to be pretty cool. Join us then. It's going to be 2:00 Eastern time, 1:00 Central American. And 7:00 Great Britain time if you're one of our jolly old friends over there in the UK. We have a couple, so yeah, take it easy. Have a good weekend, everybody.